Crime Files of Los Angeles podcast. A little different than most of the true crime podcasts. Here, I take a case out of the file cabinet, one that I worked on, and I review the facts of it. I look over the investigation, what went into it, how did the detectives track down the suspect. And then I go into the next phase, which is the jury trial. What evidence was presented to the jury? How was the case argued by the prosecution, by the defense? Then finally we talk about the conclusion of the case, as well as what happened to all the individuals in it, the witnesses, the victims, the attorneys maybe. So it's very different as far as an approach. We take it from the beginning to the end and all the details in between. I think you're going to find it fascinating, so hopefully you'll join us. So subscribe, and we generally have a new podcast every Friday at 3 o'clock. To make sure, if you subscribe, you'll know for certain when the next podcast comes up. Today's case goes back a long ways, back to the 1970s, involving the Symbionese Liberation Army, better known as the SLA. It was an urban terrorist group. Got a lot of fame for kidnapping Patty Hearst. But we're going to be talking about their plan to come to Los Angeles and placing pipe bombs under the police cars, and why they did it, how they did it, and why did it take so many years before they were all caught and prosecuted. What are the facts? Well, what is our topic about today? It is urban terrorists from the 1970s. And in particular, we're going to be talking about the Kathleen Soliah case. Well, we have to go back to 1974. There was an urban terrorist movement that was underway, and it was about redistribution of wealth. In the San Francisco area, there were a lot of wealthy people, and just across the bay in Oakland, California, there was a lot of poor people. And there was a demand that the rich, they should take their money and feed the poor people. And this unrest went on for some time, and it created a number of groups. These groups wanted to get support, and they found that the students at the University of California at Berkeley, they found that these were ideas that they thought needed to be addressed, and they joined these groups. And one of the groups was called the Symbionese Liberation Army, and they formed, the idea was to force the wealthy people to give more money as well as food and supplies to the poor. Now they, as their symbol, was the seven-headed cobra, and they were very well organized, and they had a manual to spell out how they were going to accomplish all of this. Now, as far as how large they were, this is kind of one of the misconceptions. It was never a large movement. It may have been 15 to 20 people. It varied depending on the time. The leader at the beginning was Donald DeFreeze, and after his death, then Bill Harris took over the leadership role. Now, as far as where were they located, it was up in the Bay Area, basically in Berkeley, Oakland area, but that was where they got their foothold. Now, what were they known for? Got a lot of attention back in 1973. They set out to kill the superintendent of schools of Oakland, Marcus Foster. And that became a big cause. The people who were involved in it were caught and were being prosecuted. The next thing that they were known for was the kidnapping of Patty Hearst, which we're going to be talking about right now. Follow up with that, they were well known for the Hyperion Bank robbery. We'll talk about that. Mel Sporting Goods, the shootout there, and ultimately the members dying in a shootout in Los Angeles on May 17, 1975. So they were active in a lot of different ways, but the Patty Hearst situation really got them on the map. And Patty Hearst was going to University of California at Berkeley with her boyfriend, Stephen Weed, and they got an apartment up near the university, and they'd been staying there for almost a year. And here you can see the apartment, and everything was going fine. They were living there, and I think it was in the early evening, the doorbell rang, and Stephen Weed went to the door, and as he opened the door, he was overpowered by some people who rushed in, and they kidnapped Patty Hearst. In the process, it was kind of a violent situation. They started attacking him, hitting him, and he was injured quite a bit. But he was left, but Patty Hearst was kidnapped and taken away. So they take her, and all of a sudden the Berkeley Police Department are asking for the FBI to come in and help regarding the kidnapping of Patricia Hearst. Now the Symbionese Liberation, they put out this manifesto about the arrest of Patty Hearst, and here you can see the warrant they ordered: arrest and protective custody. So they were making it as though they wanted to take her and use her as leverage, as ransom, to force her parents to give money. Now she was taken to this location. It was a house in Daly City, not too far from San Francisco, and she was kept in this closet. You can see the closet there, very small. She was kept there for 57 days. She was blindfolded. She was not able to come out of there. She was abused, physically, mentally, and even sexually abused in that closet for that long period of time. So her parents got the word from her saying, give money, give whatever you can to the poor people of Oakland. And they did. Her parents set up a food bank. They gave truckloads of food to the poor in Oakland. So it had an effect, but it had another effect. Patty Hearst became one of the SLA, and her name was Tanya. And the SLA, they liked the idea that they were able to convert her into one of them. And here, is one of the famous photos of April 1974. And here's Patty Hearst, in the red circle there, you can see her. She was one of them, and she partook of all their activities. And when they robbed the Hyperion Bank in San Francisco, she was part of it. She was one of the group that went in there. And here you can see in the circle there, she's got a gun, and DeFreeze is right behind her with the gun as well. And it was successful. They were able to get $10,000 from the bank. So she is very active in it, and she was, several weeks before, she was a victim that the FBI was looking for of a kidnapping. Now she is the suspect in a bank robbery. Quite a turn of events. Now we go to May 16th, 1974, and it's in the afternoon. The Harrises, as well as Patty Hearst, go to Mel's Sporting Goods in Inglewood, and they went there to get some socks. There was some wool socks. They were in there looking for various things, and they grabbed these socks, and they were stealing them. They were trying to walk out. Well, the security of Mel's Sporting Goods, they came up and grabbed the Harrises and pulled them aside. And Patty Hearst is outside. She sees what's going on to her colleagues inside. She gets a rifle, and she starts shooting into Mel's Sporting Goods. And she shot in a number of times through the window. Well, that scared the security inside. They kind of they weren't interested in the Harrises any longer. And as a result of that, the Harrises were able to escape. They got into this VW van. That's a picture of the van. They all got in, and Patty Hearst drove it away, and they all escaped. So that was Mel's Sporting Goods. But it's a turning point of what happened in Los Angeles. So LAPD that evening was out looking for this van, and they found the van parked on a side street, and they went up and they looked inside of it, and when they looked in the glove box, they found an old parking ticket. And when they looked at the parking ticket, they saw an address on 84th Street, and now they realized this is the van that was used in the shootout at Mel's. And so they go to that location, and they try to track him down, and they eventually got him tracked down to a safe house where the SLA were, held up. So all of a sudden, they surround it. LAPD with the SWAT team surrounds it and orders everybody to surrender. And here you can see afterwards, you can see some of the weapons that were inside that they had. And they start shooting back at LAPD, the SWAT team. And it goes back and forth, shooting from inside, and they're ordered to give up. They won't give up. They continue to shoot. Now, what the police do, they shoot canisters of tear gas inside. Well, the house is a wooden house, and it had curtains. Well, the curtains caught on fire from the hot tear gas, and so the fire department tried to come out to put out the fire, but the SLA members inside continually shot at the firefighters, and then the fire department had to retreat. Well, as a result of it, the house totally burned to the ground, and everybody inside of it died as a result of it. So I just want you to take a look at what happened there in Los Angeles. These are the people who were inside that safe house that caught on fire with the tear gas, and they all died. They all died. Some of them were under the house in kind of not a basement area, but it was under the floorboard, and some were inside the house, but they were all burned to death. And you can see these are some of the weapons that they had. So they were well armed. Now, 3 people survived, but they survived because they were at Mel's Sporting Goods, and they took off in that VW, and then they stole another car, and they had left, and they had gone to Disneyland, and were staying down in the Disneyland hotel area when all of this was going on to their colleagues in Los Angeles. So William Harris, Emily Harris, and Patty Hearst, they all survived because they were not in that safe house. So now what we want to do is talk about what happened about the reconstituted SLA. Afterwards, these members came in and joined the Harrises and Patty Hearst. Now the one that we're going to be talking about is Kathleen Soliah. She comes in with her brother, her boyfriend, and other friends. Now what happens at that point? Well, Kathleen Soliah, she was up in Berkeley at the Ho Chi Minh Park, and she gave a talk about what terrible things that the police had done to the SLA. Well, the SLA, they were so impressed with her, they made her a member of the organization. Now, so they're up, the new SLA is up in the Bay Area. They're planting bombs all over the place, trying to get attention. Now you can see these are the various civic centers, police station, terminal, bus terminals and all. They planted bombs. They went off. They exploded. But it really didn't attract the attention that they were hoping for. So they decided, okay, let's make it look like we're statewide. We're all over. So they decided to send a group down to Los Angeles to place bombs under the police cars in the Los Angeles area. So these are the people. Kathleen Soliah was the main person. She came down with William Harris, and their job was to plant bombs. Now, where do they put these bombs? Well, One of the bombs was placed under a police car at IHOP in Hollywood, and another was placed under a detective car at the Hollenbeck police station. So those were the two bombs that were planted there, and let me give you an example of what this is all about. At that time, LAPD, these are the police cars they were driving. They had the Dodge and the AMC, and everything was fine for them, but these pipe bombs, and here, this is one of the pipe bombs, was placed under the police car. What was unique about these bombs, you can see they would place a magnet under the police car, under frame of it, and they had a wedgie in a clothespin. So when the police car pulled out, that wedgie would get pulled out because the bomb is on the asphalt or the concrete parking lot. So when the wedgie comes out, the clothespin closes, and then the switch goes off for the bomb. So that was how they were constructed. And your question is, well, were they that dangerous? Yes, they were. Here was one of the police cars that they tested it on, one of the bombs, and you can see it did a lot of damage. It would kill anybody who was in that police car. Now, this was the first bomb on August 22nd, 1975, was placed under a police car, right? It was parked right there next to the International House of Pancakes. The officers had gone in there for dinner, and they got a call that it was a robbery. They came out, jumped in their car, and they turned the steering wheel real sharp, and they pulled away. They didn't realize there was a bomb underneath it. It didn't go off because when they made the turn of the steering wheel real sharp, the clothespin didn't close tight enough to explode the bomb. This is the bomb that was underneath, and you can see all of the ingredients of it. Now, at the same time, they planted another bomb under this police car in Hollenbeck Station. Now, you can see part of the bomb there. There you can see they disassembled it, and when it was together, you can see here's all the parts of it. So that is the Hollenbeck bomb, and this is the Hollywood bomb. Identical, identical. All the same parts. They were 3-inch pipe bombs, and this is what was inside them. Look at all the ingredients. All the same components, and they had the nails, would be the shrapnel. When it exploded, would go flying, and anybody anywhere within 1,000 feet would be obliterated by those nails. So now, how to put the case together? When I was working on it, we had to show that the bomb parts in Los Angeles matched the bomb parts at a safe house up in San Francisco where they built the bombs. This is where the bombs were built in San Francisco. Presidio Avenue was a house up there that they had rented. These are the bombs that were in Los Angeles. Now, how are they connected? How are we going to connect it all? That was what the case was all about. Well, up in San Francisco, this is the closet area that we're going to be talking about where the bombs were made. They were made in there, and all the parts are inside on the different shelves. And this just shows you what that house looked like up in San Francisco where the SLA was living, Kathleen Soliah and her crew. Now, I want to show you the parts. Those are the ones, the screws that were found up in San Francisco. Now, these are the clothespins with the screws in them in the Hollywood bomb and in the Hollenbeck bomb. They're identical, identical. They're a flat head and a round head type of brass screw. The nails that were found up in San Francisco are identical to the same type of nails in the Hollywood and the Hollenbeck bomb. Same thing for the batteries. The batteries that were used, that were in the San Francisco house, same type of batteries that were on the bombs in Los Angeles. So all the parts were identical. So we have to tie it together, and we know Kathleen Soliah is living in this house. She had rented it, and she and her brother and boyfriend, and I think even a sister, were living in there. So to show you the connection that we have is the latent prints. When the FBI went in there and dusted for prints, when they went into that closet where the bombs were made and all the things were stored, there's 47 fingerprints, latent prints, of Kathleen Soliah. So that ties her into the bomb-making material, and there were more of her prints throughout the house. And just here, this just shows you the FBI took these pictures. Here's Kathleen Soliah leaving, and here Josephine, her sister and brother. So we have photographs of them at that house, and we have the latent prints of Kathleen Soliah inside that. Now, how did they build a case against them after the bombs didn't go off, neither one, but they were charged with it? So the Harrises were charged. They were tried for being involved in planting these bombs under the police cars in Los Angeles. Kathleen Soliah had escaped and had gone. So she was never convicted of that, using the bombs under the police cars. So for years and years, the FBI were looking for her. It was over 25 years she was on the run. And then there was a program called America's Most Wanted. And they did, on the 25th anniversary of the shootout of the SLA by LAPD, they did a program. And they showed a photograph of Kathleen Soliah way back then when she was much younger. And somebody saw it. And they said, they called up LAPD and said, you really should check out a lady by the name of Sarah Jane Olson in Minnesota. And so, the police, okay, we'll do that. So they went back there. They found that Sarah Jane Olson lived in this house with her husband, a doctor, and she'd lived there for a long time, for 25 years. And her husband was an ER doctor there in St. Paul. And she was very active in the community. She did a number of plays. She was on stage. She wasn't hiding in a basement or somewhere. She was very much involved in the community. So who was Sarah Jane Olson? Well, kind of interesting, quite different. She didn't look the same as Kathleen Soliah. Now, she is caught, she's brought back to Los Angeles, and she's put on trial for those pipe bombs that were found under the two LAPD police cars. And that she was brought back out here, and the judge was Judge Fiddler, and the prosecutors, Mike Lattin and Eleanor Hunter. And she had a civil rights attorney who represented her, Tony Serra, and Sean Chapman. So the case went on for months and months and months, and these were the charges against her, and it never could be decided, what she wanted to do. Did she want to plead guilty? Did she want to have a trial? She indicated she wanted to have a trial, and everything was set for trial. Then all of a sudden, at the last minute, her attorney indicated she'd be willing to plead guilty, and the judge says to the prosecution, well, I'm not going to accept a guilty plea unless I know something about the case. Give me the basis of the case. Well, that's how I got involved in the case. Was I was told, okay, at 1:30, you're going to have to put together a PowerPoint slideshow to show to the judge that's going to be live on TV, showing all of the evidence that showed that Kathleen Soliah was involved in taking those bombs, making those bombs, and planting them under the police cars in Los Angeles. So I put this presentation together that was shown to the judge, shown to everybody in the courtroom. It was on live TV. And the judge said, "Oh, now I understand the case. Yeah, okay, I am willing to accept a plea of guilty." So she pled guilty to the charge of the pipe bombs, and she was sentenced to 14 years in prison. So that was, the end of the case. She went to prison, and she's serving her time there. However, the words fair and just, are they just words in the dictionary, or is there such a thing as fairness and just? Well, let's examine this. At that same time, back in April 21st, 1975, the SLA robbed this bank in Sacramento, the Crockford National Bank, and they went in there, and a lady who was in there, Myrna Opshaw, she was shot and killed in this bank robbery. And the SLA, one of the members, Steve Soliah, Kathleen Soliah's brother, was charged with it, and the U.S. attorney tried him, and it was a not guilty. He was acquitted of the charges. As a result of that, the U.S. Attorney's Office gave up. And they said, we're not going to prosecute anybody else because we weren't successful in the one that we did prosecute. At the same time, the DA's office up in Sacramento said the same thing. We're not going to prosecute anybody on the bank robbery and the murder of the victim there. Well, let's just go through that. See what that's all about. Well, when the robbery took place, the people who were outside, had the getaway cars, and there were the lookouts, Patty Hearst and William Hearst were on the outside. But the people who went inside the bank to rob it at the time was Kathleen Soliah, Michael Bolton, James Kilgore, and Emily Harris. They're inside robbing it, and the victim was in there, and they told her to lie down, sit down, and she tried to. And what was she doing there? Well, Myrna Opshaw, she was taking the collection money from Sunday, and she was depositing it in the bank. She wasn't doing anything radical. She was just depositing the money in the bank, and she's standing there, and she, okay, I'll lie down on the floor if that, but she's shot. She is shot with a shotgun, and you get shot with a shotgun, it's deadly. So, she's shot. She's still alive. They take her to the emergency room in Sacramento, and they take her in there. Her husband is the ER doctor. He sees his wife, brought in there on a gurney with a large shotgun hole in her, and she dies right in front of his eyes. Oh, just imagine what that was like. Was she a bad person, an evil person? Myrna Opshaw, she was a nurse. She was a nurse, just taking the collection money to the bank. And her husband was the ER doctor there, and this was her son and granddaughter. Well, were they ever going to get justice? Well, they weren't. But the LA DA's office, we looked at it. No, this is out of our jurisdiction. But why? Why isn't somebody bringing a case against these people for the bank robbery and murder? So Michael Atna asked me, look, Ron, put together a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation that we can show the district attorneys in Sacramento that this case can be put on. So what I did, I put together this slideshow that was taken up to Sacramento DA's office, and we showed it to him and said, look, you can prove the case. The evidence is there. You can prove that all of these people who participated in the bank robbery up there, there's a connection, and we can connect every one of them. Well, the DA's office, they looked at it and said, well, I guess you're right. I guess there is sufficient evidence. So they filed charges against the people who were involved in the bank robbery and the murder. So they were all arrested. They were brought in, and here's Kathleen Soliah. She's brought in with Emily Harris, who was the one that had the shotgun. And at time of sentencing, Emily Harris, they all pled guilty to the robbery and the murder. She got 8 years. She's the one that pulled the trigger of the shotgun. William Harris got 7 years. Kathleen Soliah got 6 years, and the others got basically 6 years too. So eventually there was fair and just on that case. Now, I just want to bring you up to date as to what does it look like today at the IHOP on Sunset Boulevard in Hollywood. I'm sure many of you have been out to Hollywood, and you most likely drove by it and you didn't realize all the history involved in it. There it is. There's the IHOP. It's been remodeled a little bit, still there. Now, the question is always, what do you do with these urban terrorists? The old urban terrorists. Now they've changed their stripes. They're completely different, and they're sorry for what happened back then. Some people think of them as heroes. They were fighting for a cause back there in 1970. On the other hand, some people think that they were terrorists, and they should pay for what they did, the harm they did to other people, especially in the bank robbery up in Sacramento. Well, you decide what the proper punishment should be and how these urban terrorists really should be treated. Well, hopefully you found this Kathleen Soliah case involving the SLA as well as Patty Hearst. A lot of twists and turns in it. But if you want more details of what really happened, get my book. It's in 2 versions. The ebook, Bombs Under Your Car. The print version is Prosecutrix, about Eleanor Hunter, who was the prosecutor who put it on. A lot of information there about both the LA case as well as the Sacramento case. Well, hopefully you'll join us again for another True Crime Files of Los Angeles by Ronald E. Bowers. See you next time.